Well, hey, you guys. Time once again for another Tomes of Terror book review. So, the author Barbara Avon contacted me a while back and asked me to review her 2022 novella, which is called Revived. The tagline of it is, "He should have stayed dead," which, that's pretty intriguing. Now, she isn't actually an author I'm familiar with. I guess she writes in several different genres, dark romance, thriller, horror, like some other ones. She's done some time travel, like some kind of sci-fi kind of stuff too, I think. This story here, Revived, is definitely like a psychological horror story with very heavy doses of dark romance type of thing. Clocks in at about 100 pages, more or less. So like I said, it's a novella, like not a full novel. So I actually like this story quite a bit. Honestly, I think it might have worked better as a full novel, though. The brief length of it, I feel like didn't really give me enough time to get really invested, like in the two main characters. And I kind of feel like the concept of it was really interesting and it could have been fleshed out a lot more. Now, like I said, it also leans kind of hard into romance novel tropes at times, which I'm generally not a fan of, but I didn't actually mind it too much in this context. So at the beginning of the story, it's 1994, and we're introduced to ridiculously perfect married couple, Stephen and Cassie Gold. And the first scene, this is what I mean. It just kind of leans hard at a romance novel. They're fucking at the beginning. It's like that's the very first scene, like the two of them fucking. So and this happens several times, like over the course of the 100 pages. So yeah, so these two like seriously like stepped right off the cover of like a Harlequin romance or something like that. Like Steven, the husband, is super chiseled and hot, and he's really well off, like he's some kind of editor or something like that. And he's completely devoted to his wife, just thinking about how awesome she is all the time. And Cassie is just this beautiful artist and has this kind of like troubled past that makes her like all mysterious and intriguing and shit like that. So, you see what I'm saying. Now, she's implied, in fact, to have been maybe something of kind of a repressed young woman, which you find out why that is later on, but that she's kind of like blossomed under the ministrations of her hunky husband, I guess, over the past 11 years that they've been married. So shades of 50 Shades, but not that much, you know what I mean? And this is a lot better than 50 Shades of Grey, don't get me wrong. So they're seemingly very happy with each other. They're even thinking of they're both trying to quit smoking so they can have a baby in 6 months or something like that. So they live in this house that was left to Cassie by her dad, who she absolutely despised for reasons that you find out later on. Now, her dad also happened to croak right in his easy chair in the house's living room. And the dude wasn't found for like 5 days. So by the time Cassie and her other relatives like found him, he was nice and ripe. So not a great situation all around. So Cassie has been wanting to sell this place because understandably it kind of creeps her out and she has like some bad memories associated with it, but they just haven't gotten around to it yet. Now, fortuitously, just as Cassie is being like, man, it's been 2 years, let's call a realtor, I want to get out of here. They kind of have a little lifeline or something like that. Like there's a friend of theirs named Jim, and he calls and asks them to house sit for a few months because he's going overseas like for business or something like that. So this seems to be like, just what the doctor ordered. It's like, oh, we can get out of the house for a few months. Now, in spite of this couple's seemingly idyllic life, it's clear that Cassie has some issues. She takes pills for anxiety, but tells Stephen they're vitamins, for example. And near the beginning of the story, she actually has a nightmare about finding her decomposed dad, like in the chair, and that actually results in her sleepwalking. And Stephen finds her downstairs, kind of lightly slicing at her leg, like with a kitchen knife, without being aware of what she's doing. So it's implied that there are still like a bunch of things in her past that are still kind of fucking with her mind, but Stephen does seem like understanding of her past traumas, at least. Now, after the Golds have got themselves set up at Jim's place, they're like watering his plants and feeding his cat and all that. Spoiler alert, the cat does not make it. So, you know what I mean? I know I always have to warn people about animal stuff because I get really upset about that too. And what happened to the cat in this like really upset me. So I'm just telling you that ahead of time. After they get set up there, Stephen and Cassie get invited to this kind of fancy dinner by Stephen's boss, where he works at like the Ottawa Herald. So I guess it's set in Canada. And the boss is named Richard. So Stephen has just gotten a raise and he's just kind of like, all around quintessential golden boy type of character. So they all have a great time at this dinner, even though they all get pretty drunk, but, fun drunk, you know what I'm saying? So the Golds help Richard into a cab because he's very inebriated, and then they get one for themselves. But before they can drive off in the cab, Cassie realized she forgot her watch in the restaurant. Like she took it off to wash her hands or some shit. I don't remember. So Steven goes, oh, I'll go back inside to get it. So there's like a bunch of traffic and the cab can't stay at the curb. So the driver has to kind of go around the block, like while they're waiting for Steven to come back out. And then there's also this torrential downpour and visibility is like near zero. Steven gets run over by the cab as he comes out into the road in the rain, like looking for the very cab that eventually mows him down. So obviously Cassie is just completely beside herself. She's just, crouching by his prone body, just like screaming and screaming. Now Steven gets rushed to the hospital and he actually dies for about a minute, but he's then revived. And afterward, he makes a pretty quick recovery. So he comes home like in a pretty short time and he appears to be as good as new. However, just as in many stories where somebody dies for a brief time and then comes back, Steven isn't quite the same. As a matter of fact, his mental health starts to kind of steadily deteriorate as he begins to see ghosts. Or they're kind of not really ghosts, but they're kind of like the fucked up looking corpses of people he's wronged in the past. And as perfect as he's portrayed as studly and desired by all as he is, he did some really sketchy shit over the years, including an intensely questionable incident involving his own eventual wife, Cassie, which was kind of messed up. So the bulk of the story then is about, I guess, how we can never be free of our past sins, pretty much. So the story largely revolves around Steven's breakdown as he becomes like increasingly haunted by these horrific visions that started like after he was revived from death. But Cassie's past is delved into as well. I mean, in Cassie's case, she was more like victim of trauma than perpetrator. But it was kind of a nice parallel having the two characters going on like a similar journey, but sort of from opposite sides, if that makes any sense. So the concept of this story gave me Flatliners vibes for sure. And I'm talking about the 1990 original, not the remake from 2017. But Revived definitely focuses more on the horror aspect because Flatliners was a horror movie too, but it kind of delved into questions of like God and the afterlife and redemption and things like that, which this one doesn't really do that. This one's more just horror focused, like he's just seeing like these corpsey people. Now I found the ending of this to be a touch confusing, I admit. It read a little bit like maybe the whole thing had been a dream that Steven was having, but I'm not entirely sure if that's the case. I guess that's not really a spoiler because I don't know if that's what happened at the end or not. I'd probably have to like read it again to see what happened. So as I mentioned, at times Revived reads very much like a romance novel. Like it has kind of steamy sex scenes and has like long passages about what a smoke show Steven is and how all women's panties like immediately become sodden like whenever he walks into their eye line. Like it's kind of ridiculous. This kind of amused me I'm not really a romance girly. I'm not into that kind of stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like smut as much as the next bitch, but romance novels aren't really my thing, like especially in the middle of a horror story. But in the context of this, I mostly just thought it was funny. And as I mentioned also, I kind of feel like both Steven and Cassie needed more substance as characters, which is why I feel like this probably would have been even better, like as a longer work, like as a full-length novel. There were a lot of things that were introduced into the story, like the thing about Cassie's father dying in the house and the whole setup about, them staying at Jim's place, which was kind of a big deal made of that. Cassie's past traumas. I kind of feel like those could have been explored more and like maybe tied in more with the overarching theme of the story. And I kind of feel like even Steven's very turbulent history is only kind of brought up in brief flashbacks when he sees some new corpsey manifestation, like showing up before his face. So yeah, I definitely feel like this would have worked a lot better. Like it's good as it is, but I kind of feel like there was a lot more room for it to be expanded. So it probably should have been novel length. Oh, and this is not a big deal and probably something an editor should have caught. But a lot of things in this story were italicized when they shouldn't have been. Like, yes, movie and book titles and the names of newspapers, for example, yes, those are italicized and that's correct. But band names, sports teams, games, Italian coffee drink names, song titles, those are not italicized. And it was weird because they were in the story sometimes, but sometimes not. So it was kind of inconsistent. Like, so it wasn't a huge thing, but it did kind of made my grammar gland kind of twitch. You know how I go. So yeah, I kind of feel like all in all, if you like really dark psychological horror with kind of a smutty romance angle to it, then this would probably be right up your alley. It's really a very fast-paced tale. It gets kind of spooky at times, like especially the descriptions of the stuff that Steven is seeing. And it kind of like reveals new layers of just horrific past events, like as more things go on, as you find out more about like what Steven did in the past and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool how it was kind of just kind of portioned out, you know what I mean, like as the story went on. So thank you again to Barbara Avon for sending me a copy of the book, and that will do it for this book review. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, remember, like, share, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys again on the next one. Bye.